What looks like arrogance in a narcissist is often shame-wearing armor. The loud confidence, the dismissive tone, the superiority, the refusal to admit fault are not signs of someone who feels secure. They are signals of someone running from an inner collapse. Shame is unbearable to the narcissistic psyche because it threatens the false self they worked so hard to construct. To them, admitting wrongdoing feels like emotional death. So instead of facing it, they bury it under grandiosity. When they belittle you, correct you unnecessarily, or act as if they are above consequence, they are not celebrating strength, they are defending against exposure. Deep down, they know how they treated you crossed a line, but acknowledging that truth would require them to see themselves clearly, and clarity is what they fear most. Arrogance becomes their shield because shame feels too raw, too dangerous, too close to the truth they avoid. Every time they inflate their importance, they are pushing away the memory of moments when they acted small, cruel, or selfish. This is why they react so strongly to criticism, boundaries, or silence. Why our refusal to play along threatens to peel back the mask. When you stop chasing explanations or begging for decency, their arrogance intensifies because the shame underneath starts knocking louder. They may rewrite history, blame you, or portray themselves as the victim, not because they believe it fully, but because the alternative is unbearable. Their arrogance is not confidence, it is compensation. It is the performance of someone terrified of being seen as flawed. They cannot sit quietly with what they did, so they distract themselves with dominance and control. The more they insist they were right, the more you can be certain something inside them knows otherwise. Shame does not disappear just because it is denied. It sinks deeper, turning into defensiveness, contempt, and emotional distance. When you understand this, their behavior stops feeling personal and starts looking psychological, revealing that what hurt you was not power, but a person desperately hiding from their own reflection. Cruelty is rarely born from strength. It grows from insecurity that has learned how to strike before it can be seen. When a narcissist wounds you with words, neglect, or calculated indifference, it is not because they feel powerful inside, but because they feel exposed. Their cruelty is a defense mechanism designed to regain control over a situation that threatens their fragile self-image. Deep within them lives a fear of being ordinary, replaceable, or unworthy, and when that fear is triggered, it transforms into harshness. Instead of sitting with vulnerability, they choose domination because domination feels safer than honesty. Insecure people who lack emotional grounding often weaponize cruelty as a way to feel superior. By making you feel small, confused, or guilty, they temporarily escape their own internal discomfort. Every cutting remark and every cold withdrawal is an attempt to restore balance inside themselves by destabilizing you. This is why their behavior often escalates when you show strength, independence, or emotional clarity. Your growth reminds them of their inner emptiness, and rather than confront that void, they attack the reflection. Cruelty becomes a way to silence the voice inside that whispers they are not as special or flawless as they pretend. What makes this cruelty particularly damaging is its calculated nature. It is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is subtle, wrapped in jokes, sarcasm, or moral superiority. Sometimes it is neglect, the deliberate withholding of warmth and validation. These acts are not accidental, they are strategies born from insecurity that needs constant reassurance. The narcissist cannot tolerate feeling insignificant, so they manufacture situations where they appear in control. Hurting you becomes proof, in their mind, that they still matter. Over time, this pattern traps them. The more cruelty they use to avoid insecurity, the more isolated they become. Genuine connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly what they refuse. So they are left surrounded by people, yet emotionally alone, constantly performing strength while feeling hollow inside. Understanding this does not excuse the harm they caused, but it reveals the truth beneath the behavior. That what wounded you was not confidence or superiority, but a deeply insecure person using cruelty to escape themselves. They remember what they did even when they deny it, because memory does not disappear just because it is inconvenient. A narcissist may insist they never said those words, never caused that pain, never crossed that line, but denial is not the same as forgetting. The human mind can distort, minimize, and rewrite events, yet the emotional imprint remains stored beneath the surface. What they deny outwardly is often what they replay inwardly, not as remorse expressed openly, but as discomfort they cannot fully escape. Their refusal to acknowledge the truth is a strategy to protect their self-image, not evidence of innocence or ignorance. Inside them lives a quiet awareness of the moments they saw you hurt and chose themselves anyway. They may justify it by telling themselves you deserved it, that you were too sensitive, or that circumstances forced their behavior. But justification only works temporarily. When they are alone, when distractions fade, fragments of reality surface. This is why narcissists often avoid silence, reflection, or deep emotional conversations. Stillness invites memory, and memory invites accountability. Denial becomes their way of keeping the door shut on feelings they do not know how to process. This internal remembering explains many of their contradictory behaviors. They may avoid you while still watching from a distance. They may act indifferent while reacting strongly to any sign of your healing. These reactions are not random. They are responses to the unresolved knowledge of what they did and what it cost. Even rage can be a form of remembrance, because anger is easier to express than shame. By attacking or dismissing you, they momentarily push away the truth that keeps resurfacing inside them. Memory, when denied, turns into tension. It shows up as defensiveness, as sudden mood shifts, as an exaggerated need to be seen as right. The more they insist on their version of events, the more energy they are spending suppressing the original one. You do not need their admission to validate your experience. The fact that they must work so hard to deny it already confirms that they remember, because forgetting requires no effort at all. Silence from a narcissist is often misunderstood as indifference, but many times it is guilt disguised as distance. When they withdraw, disappear, or suddenly go quiet, it is easy to assume you never mattered. Yet silence can be the only place they know how to put feelings they cannot face. Indifference would look relaxed, calm, and emotionally neutral. Their silence is usually tense, abrupt, and emotionally charged, because it is not peace, it is avoidance. They go silent when words would expose them, when explanations would lead to accountability, and when engagement would force them to confront how they treated you. Guilt is uncomfortable for anyone, but for a narcissist, it is intolerable. It threatens the image they have built of themselves as justified, superior, or blameless. When guilt surfaces, instead of processing it, they retreat. Silence becomes a wall that protects them from questions, emotions, and reflection. By not responding, they avoid admitting fault without having to lie directly. It gives them the illusion of control while sparing them the discomfort of remorse. This is why their silence often appears after conflict, after you set a boundary, or after you speak the truth clearly. Their quiet is not empty. It is filled with thoughts they do not want to have. They replay moments they dismiss too quickly, words they said too harshly, and opportunities where they chose ego over empathy. Rather than face those memories, they cut off communication. Silence allows them to freeze the narrative, to avoid repair, and to escape the vulnerability required to acknowledge harm. It is not that they feel nothing, it is that they feel too much of the wrong thing and lack the emotional tools to handle it. This kind of silence can feel punishing to you because it is unresolved and abrupt. It leaves questions hanging and denies closure. But its purpose is self-protection, not empowerment. If they truly did not care, your absence would not require silence at all. The fact that they withdraw instead of engaging shows that something inside them is unsettled. Silence becomes the place where guilt hides, because facing you would mean facing themselves, and that is what they are trying hardest to avoid. Your healing exposes their wrongdoing in ways words never could. When you begin to regain your sense of self, when your voice steadies and your eyes no longer search for their approval, it quietly tells the truth about what happened. A narcissist relies on the belief that you needed them, that you would remain broken, confused, or dependent. Your healing disrupts that narrative. It suggests that the pain was real, the harm was significant, and yet you survived it. That reality threatens the version of events they prefer to believe, the one where they were justified, misunderstood, or even generous. As you heal, you stop reacting the way they expect. You no longer chase explanations or collapse under their silence. You begin to respond with boundaries instead of emotion. This shift forces them to confront the possibility that the problem was not your weakness, but their behavior. Healing turns you into living evidence. You do not have to accuse or explain. Your stability alone reveals that something was wrong. This is why your growth can provoke irritation, dismissal, or sudden attempts to regain control. Your peace reminds them of the chaos they created. They may try to minimize your progress, mock your self-awareness, or suggest that you are pretending to be healed. These reactions are defensive, not observational. If your healing were meaningless, it would not require commentary. The discomfort they feel comes from the contrast between who you are becoming and who they were when they hurt you. Healing strips away their ability to rewrite the past because it shows cause and effect. People do not heal from nothing. Recovery implies injury, and injury implies responsibility. What makes this exposure powerful is that it is quiet. You are not demanding accountability, yet accountability is implied. You are not seeking validation, yet the truth stands on its own. The narcissist may never admit wrongdoing, but your healing makes denial harder to maintain internally. It places them face to face with the impact of their actions, not through confrontation, but through your resilience. In becoming whole again, you illuminate what was broken, and that light reaches places they worked hard to keep in shadow. They fear accountability more than abandonment because accountability threatens the core illusion they live by. Being left can be explained away, blamed on your weakness, your disloyalty, or bad timing. Accountability, however, demands ownership. It requires them to admit that their choices caused harm, that their behavior was not justified, and that the image they project is incomplete or false. For a narcissist, this is far more terrifying than being alone. Abandonment wounds the ego, but accountability dismantles the identity they depend on to survive emotionally. When faced with accountability, they are forced to confront shame without escape. There is no one else to blame, no story to rewrite, no audience to manipulate. This is why they often react with rage, dismissal, or sudden withdrawal when you calmly name what happened. It is not the loss of you that unsettles them in that moment. It is the possibility of being seen clearly. To be held accountable is to lose control over the narrative, and control is how they protect themselves from self-awareness. Abandonment still allows them to preserve their sense of superiority. They can convince themselves that you were replaceable, that they never needed you, that moving on proves strength. Accountability strips away that defense. It exposes vulnerability, insecurity, and moral responsibility. This is why they may chase you when you are leaving but resist every attempt at honest conversation. They want the attachment without the reckoning. They want connection without reflection. The moment you ask for acknowledgement, apology, or change, the fear intensifies. This fear shapes their behavior long after the relationship ends. They may avoid situations where their actions could be questioned. They may surround themselves with people who do not challenge them. They may become louder in their certainty and more rigid in their beliefs. All of this serves one purpose: to outrun the possibility of being held responsible. Accountability would require growth, and growth would require admitting fault. Understanding this shifts how you interpret their reactions. Their anger, avoidance, and defensiveness are not signs of indifference. They are signs of panic. The truth is not that they did not care enough to face accountability. It is that they cared too much about preserving their false self to risk seeing it collapse done. Their shame grows when you stop begging for closure because your silence removes the role they assigned you. A narcissist expects you to chase answers, demand explanations, and seek validation from them. That pursuit reinforces their sense of control and importance. When you stop asking, stop pleading, and stop trying to make them understand, it disrupts the dynamic that allowed them to feel superior. Your withdrawal is not seen as peace at first. It is felt as rejection of their authority over the story. Without your questions, they are left alone with their own unanswered ones. Closure seeking allows them to stay in a position of power. They can withhold truth, twist facts, or drip feed responses to keep you emotionally engaged. When you no longer participate, that power evaporates. There is no audience for their justifications, no one to convince, no one to blame directly. This absence forces an internal confrontation. They must either sit with the reality of what they did or distract themselves from it. That internal pressure is where shame intensifies because there is no longer a place to project responsibility. Your refusal to beg also challenges their belief that they were indispensable. Narcissists often equate worth with being needed. When you move forward without their validation, it contradicts the idea that they were the source of your stability or identity. This realization can be deeply unsettling. It suggests that the harm they caused did not define you, and that their role in your life was not as powerful as they believed. That recognition fuels shame because it exposes the limits of their influence. They may respond by minimizing the relationship, mocking your healing, or pretending they never cared. These reactions are defensive strategies meant to soothe the discomfort created by your independence. If they truly felt nothing, your silence would not provoke any internal reaction. The fact that it does means something unresolved remains. Shame thrives in the space where control once existed but no longer does. By not seeking closure from them, you reclaim authority over your own narrative. You decide that understanding does not require their permission. This quiet decision shifts the balance of power and leaves them facing the one thing they worked hardest to avoid: the truth of their behavior without your participation in denying it. Your dignity is the mirror they avoid because it reflects a version of themselves they cannot tolerate seeing. Dignity is calm, steady, and self-contained. It does not shout, chase, accuse, or beg. It simply exists in self-respect, boundaries, and quiet strength. When you hold your dignity after being mistreated, you embody a truth that does not require explanation. You show that you know what you deserved and that you are no longer willing to accept less. For a narcissist, this is deeply unsettling because dignity exposes contrast. It reveals the difference between cruelty and character, between manipulation and integrity, between ego and self-worth. They avoid this mirror because it reminds them of their behavior without saying a word. Your composure becomes a silent accusation. Your boundaries become evidence. Your peace becomes testimony. You do not have to remind them of what they did because your dignity carries the memory for you. Every time they see you stable, grounded, and self-respecting, it reflects the chaos, selfishness, and harm they brought into the relationship. This reflection threatens the false image they hold of themselves as justified, superior, or blameless. A narcissist survives through distortion. They reshape reality to protect their ego. Dignity cannot be distorted easily. It is too clear, too consistent, too grounded in truth. That is why they may avoid you, dismiss you, or devalue you. Not because you are insignificant, but because you are confronting. Your presence forces awareness. Your growth forces comparison. Your silence forces memory. In your dignity, they see what they were unwilling to become. This is also why they may try to provoke you. If they can pull you into anger, chaos, or desperation, the mirror cracks. If you react emotionally, they can tell themselves the story they prefer, that you were unstable, dramatic, or the problem. But when you remain dignified, they lose that escape. They cannot rewrite your composure. They cannot manipulate your self-respect. They cannot control your narrative anymore. Your dignity is not for them, but it affects them. It becomes the reflection they avoid because it holds truth without cruelty and strength without dominance. It shows that power does not come from control, but from self-possession. And in that reflection, they are forced to see what they lacked, what they damaged, and what they can no longer reach. The truth settles gently but firmly in the soul. The narcissist is not untouched by what they did to you. Their denial, their arrogance, their silence, and their cruelty are not signs of victory. They are signs of avoidance. Shame lives beneath every defense they built, and it grows louder as you grow stronger. You were never invisible to them. You were unforgettable in the way truth always is to those who run from it.